My first guest is here speaking about improving incident response using DevOps and SRE practices. So I'm delighted to have him here with me as my first guest, founder and chief product officer of Rundeck Inc., Damon Edwards. Damon, thank you for being my first victim of the day.
Thanks for having me. Proud to go first. Let's get all the mistakes out of the way now.
Yeah, well, that's great. I mean, if the problem is you're probably going to be so great that everybody else after you is going to be a giant letdown.
Flattery, it's
So
good.
try
Thank you.
not
We'll
to
try.
be
I'll
too
try.
good.
I'll keep it under control.
Yeah, you'll make everybody else look bad. Okay, so first question is, you're trying to improve, you're giving us suggestions on how to improve something. So what's wrong with the way we're doing things now?
Well, I mean, as an industry, we've become very fixated on deployment. Everything's about deploy, deploy, deploy. All the DevOps stuff's deploy, continuous delivery is deploy, infrastructure as code is deploy. All the Kubernetes cloud lovely stuff is all about how can we deploy faster.
Faster.
And we kind of forget about that where we make our money is operations, what happens after deployment. And you see in a lot of organizations, they're very fixated on that improving deployment, and then you punch through that kind of mirage, and right back to 2009, everything's very siloed, takes too long, costs too much, breaks too often. So the point of my talk today was really about outlining how that it's not really, we're trying the best we can, but we're put into a system that systemically is broken. There's a lot of conventional wisdom and thinking and organizational ideas in operations that sets us up to fail or to really be kind of swimming upstream all day long. So the talk was really about that, and fundamentally, if you want to get down to kind of what the heart of it is, it's how we organize ourselves in these functional silos, meaning the network folks. There's 5 different networking teams, different things. We've got our storage team, our platform teams, our database teams, our compute teams, our new cloud teams, and to manage all those silos and the work that has to pass through all those things, we put these things called ticket queues into place. And if we look at the kind of the economics behind queuing theories, and there's been a lot of study of queues outside of IT, and it shows that they're very expensive things. They increase lead times, they decrease quality, they cost more in management overhead. They're very destructive things. There's actually kind of science behind that, and yet this is what we've chosen to run our lives in operations. And kind of, my main thesis is that, going through, having your life run by tickets is a terribly expensive and wasteful way to live your life. So that was what that was the problem statement.
Well, wasteful and unpleasant for people on both the side of filing the tickets and those receiving the tickets. Okay, so if that's the problem, then how are you suggesting we go about fixing it?
Well, I mean, there's the obvious one, which is get rid of the need to have queues in the first place, right? So, look for how can we, whether it's through shared responsibility models or actually trying to changing the organization, go to more of a cross-functionally built organization. Design your organization. Right now we're designed very vertically based on functional specialty. Think more about what does it look like from the customer perspective, which is more of a horizontal perspective. Like even internal customers, they just want an environment. They don't need to have 19 tickets open with different groups. They just want to get an environment delivered. So that's kind of one, is figuring out how do we just fundamentally reassemble our organization so that we don't have to have a lot of handoffs. We don't need silos. And number two, we're empowering the people closest to the problems to solve the problems. You don't have to do a bunch of escalations through tickets. So that's kind of one. But people are going to say, well, but we don't have enough people to do that kind of reorganization. Then it comes down to replacing where you can't get rid of those handoffs. Replace them with self-service automation. So pull-based self-service to where those teams can get what they want when they want it. So instead of thinking like an old-fashioned like Savvis managed services, open a ticket, maybe you'll get an environment someday, think more like AWS, which is there's an API or a button you can hit and you'll get what you want. And it's not only that, but you can also define what you want. So in the AWS world, you can define your AMI and then request those AMIs to be run. How do you apply that same model to the rest of operations, to where people can create services to offload a lot of the work they normally would have to do, which is going to be helpful in all this kind of high-speed DevOps type world, but also to be able to kind of reorganize and stay out of the way of the people as we try to get our work done.
The people who are trying to actually do the things, use the things that have just been
So give them all the operational goodness we've created all these years. We know how to run things, but we need to turn that into services that the people who are on the delivery side can pull as needed. Move the operational activity the ability to run the operational activity to wherever in the organization it makes the most sense to do that.
Okay, well, so if you were giving all this advice to the people at home and they're thinking, but I have this giant ticketing system right now, what's your piece of advice on how to get rid of it? Step one to making the big change.
So, I mean, step one, I think, is to think about an operations as a service model, right? And it really starts as simple as anything that's coming into production, define a standard set of operating procedures for that thing, and then you're able to tell the people who are delivering those things to plug in, whether it's shell scripts, Python scripts, whatever they've got, plug into that standard operating vocabulary, and then that's how we get those buttons created, and then have the platform to turn around and let the, other people run those. And that's a lot of what we've been doing at Rundeck, and it started as an open source platform. We really learned this from the enterprise customers of ours who are using that. So we have a lot of stuff we've written on operations as a service, and we're out in public talking about it as well.
All right, well, good stuff. Damon, thank you so much for being my first guest today. It's been delightful having you.
Thank you for having me.
Damon Edwards. Now you stick around. The Information Week News Desk will be right back after the break.